King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Happy New Year from yours truly, King of Podcasts and the Wrestling is Real podcast. Let's talk about day one. So tonight, the pay-per-view that we were given tells a lot about where this company is right now. Lack of depth, lack of direction. Now, I want to give a little update for myself as we get started on the show. I'm sure some of you out there know there's a lot of spiking of cases of those that are getting affected by the Omicron variant and COVID-19. Well, I've been able to avoid that for the entire interim of this whole thing going on, this pandemic, until this weekend. Now, I kind of felt something when I recorded the shows this week, when I recorded last week's show, and some of other podcasts. Well, I had a test done on Wednesday, and the results came in by email last night, 12:15 a.m. after the ball dropped on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, that I'm positive for COVID. Tested positive for COVID-19. There you go. I don't feel any symptoms right now. What I did have was I was getting over some allergic reaction because the weather's kind of just been funky. And, you know, runny nose, a little bit of a congestion, and that's it. But that's what allergies are, at least for me. I think I might have felt something from it, but, you know, otherwise I'm doing okay. And at this point, I'm past the whatever protocols I need to go through, so, yeah. Now I'm okay to get back in front of this microphone again. You know, I'm getting back to health, and I will be COVID-free soon. So it means, does that make me immune? Is that what it is? Okay. So let's talk about the pay-per-view tonight. Long story short, we had 7 matches on the card. Roman Reigns scratched off the main event, a main event match, because he tested positive for COVID-19. Now, I don't know if they said anything in terms of if he was experiencing any symptoms, or if they said anything at all about if he was just in contact. We really don't know about that. But we know where things were supposed to go at first. But yeah, Roman Reigns tested positive. Also, the Intercontinental title match, Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura, was also scratched off the show today for whatever reason. So like I said, symptoms, if it's the same thing I'm going through, it didn't make much of a difference. So that's where we're at with that. Otherwise, the matches, pre-show, Sheamus and Ridge Holland over Cesaro and Ricochet. And then the matches themselves, I'll go through and just run through them real quick, because it was a one-match pay-per-view, or excuse me, premium live event, they call it now. It doesn't matter. All right. In the matches they had tonight, they had a couple that went a little bit of length, and you could just tell that of what they had on the card and what they've been working with on television for the last couple weeks. You know, this end part of the year following Survivor Series, and what they were working with right now, and just the results of the matches afterwards, they were fine. Like, I don't think it was anything where we were just disappointed by the match themselves. But when you're given the build that's given for most of these matches and the apparent predictable results, it doesn't say much about the pay-per-view except just kind of just there. Feels like an Impact Plus pay-per-view, except we did have one title change tonight, with Brock Lesnar becoming, once again, WWE Champion. Okay. So in that, Usos retain over New Day, and we've seen that match over and over. But this crowd in Atlanta did enjoy it for what it looks like. I mean, they had a pretty decent crowd in Atlanta tonight. Looked like it's a lot of crowd, and people were kind of into it. It was a very family-friendly crowd. Definitely not a smart crowd. Nothing like those kind of crowds. We're not getting those anymore. If you're looking at what we have now, the kind of crowds that show up, they're not really smart. They're not like that real. They're not an AEW crowd. I mean, when you look at the crowds for the WWE and the AEW shows, they're oil and water. They definitely are very different. So yeah, that match happened. No surprise, I knew they drop again. Drew McIntyre over Madcap Moss in a very short match, 10 minutes. Then you got Migos accompanying RK Bro. They decided to come to RK Bro instead of Street Profits. Think about that. And even though Montez Ford, they definitely put a little bit of interest in him and how he was able to go and be very flexible during the match and some of the moves that he did. Street Profits are in the same spot. RK Bro wins, and Randy Orton and Riddle look like they were a well-oiled machine, and doesn't look like there are any signs of any kind of issues or splits. Nothing at all. They look like they're going to be pretty solid as a team going into WrestleMania, whoever they're going to go up against. And the Usos, who do you have as opponents for them? Tag team divisions mean nothing right now. Absolutely nothing. They don't care, and they might have tag teams, but the division in general doesn't mean much. It's insignificant. Much like the U.S. title, much like the Intercontinental title, which were not defended tonight. And that's it. It doesn't make much of a difference. Those belts are irrelevant until they put them on somebody else. When those belts will have any kind of relevancy, maybe, is when they build some stars that they bring up out of this new crop of athletes to go and bring together down the line. Or anybody in the NXT 2.0 realm that is definitely cut from the cloth that Vince McMahon wants to have presented. That is from scratch, from the ground up, built under Vince's vision, basically. And sure, you want to talk about it might be just because it was anything that Triple H isn't doing and anything that Triple H created is being erased. Yeah, you could probably call it that. I don't know if it's going to be so much that. It's enough people saying that. But for me, it goes across the board for anybody who was brought up in the NXT realm that was just professional wrestlers. Going back even farther, when you look at some of the stars they've let go as well. So Edge and The Miz, this is a startup match for their feud, and Beth Phoenix comes out, thus creating the match we were going to expect down the line, where we're going to get a mixed tag team match. No surprise there. And Edge getting the win on The Miz because of such debut or return of Beth Phoenix as a distraction for Miz. And they actually had the most time of the night. In that match, I felt like they were running on like half speed. And I don't know if it's just because Edge needs a little bit of slowing down just to kind of make sure the moves go, or just the moves that The Miz has. And I just think these two guys haven't really worked in the ring with each other that much. You can tell, like, if it was Edge with Randy Orton or John Cena, different story, or Daniel Bryan, different story. But Edge here with The Miz, I don't know. They're trying to do something with these guys here. I'm sure it's Edge that's probably controlling the pencil on this. And we're where we are now with Beth Phoenix coming in, and they'll figure out what they're going to do with some kind of mixed tag or whatever they're going to do down the line. We get Liv Morgan and Becky Lynch one more time. And Liv Morgan, no matter how much more excitement or how much more intensity she tries to bring out, her ruthless aggression that she put out tonight, it doesn't account for her bland promo ability, being able to cut promos with the scripts that are given to her. And the fact that Liv Morgan falls into a category, and I feel like I'm going to talk about this coming up on Wednesday on the show. She falls into the category of wrestlers or superstars that the fans get behind. And because of the fact that we have those fans that are not my age and younger, that, you get behind somebody and you like them. And let's just say it like this. If you are a fan of a said wrestler and she's a beautiful girl and you are a stan for her, and, guys out there, you might be simps for her, okay? If you had a chance to talk to her through social media or whatever, or get to meet her in person, you would go gaga over her. Just the fantasizing the idea that she would be your friend or maybe even something more. Who knows? And for some fans out there to feel like, well, this person works so hard. They put in so much effort, and they've been here for so long. They deserve to be champion. And that's enough reason. That's just enough reason for somebody to come in and say, okay, Becky Lynch should drop the belt to Liv Morgan. You tell the story of her background. You tell the story of her making her comeuppance. Right. Now, when you look at the athletes here, when you look at Liv Morgan, okay, you could say something about how the company, they should reward longevity. They should reward loyalty. They should reward improvement. Right. But they don't. I mean, in most cases, Liv Morgan does have a pretty certain spot right now. As far as I know, she should feel good that for the fact that, if she's wanting to be with the company, that she wasn't one of the stars that got released. Instead, she got elevated. And they gave her multiple chances to get over. And they tried. And she's not getting over with the crowd. I don't think she's getting over just in general. I mean, she's not generating or spiking any ratings as a result. And she's not doing much in terms of the crowd and getting over with her when Becky Lynch just had an opponent with her. And the crowd was much more into Becky, with a little bit of smattering for Liv in terms of just being that opponent, getting a chance and having the hope to win the match, but did not. But Liv Morgan in defeat gets a 17-minute match with Becky Lynch. And they made it a lot of times where Becky Lynch was on the ropes and could have lost the belt. Now, sure, people are going to just say, well, Liv Morgan just got buried as a result. Listen, maybe this is as far as she goes. Does everyone have to be champion? And what's the match that's the next big money maker for this company if Liv Morgan's champion? Who are you setting up next as her opponent? That's going to be like, who do you have as the opponent for her at WrestleMania? Who's to say that Liv Morgan is going to be a main eventer in one of the 4 critically main event matches, because the women's titles and the men's singles titles are the priority when it comes to WrestleMania, aside from maybe 1 or 2 featured feuds that do not include belts. So Liv Morgan should just have that spot. I mean, if you look at the way the booking's been done for her, sure, you could say that really she hasn't, based on the booking they've done with her, she hasn't earned that spot. And I don't feel like that she's got to the spot where she can be any bigger than she is. Because I don't think she's really gone out any more as a singles competitor. I don't think she's changed much. Though they've made quite a few changes with her character. And the current incarnation of her character has not gone over well. And because of the fact that she's no longer in a tag team, also has not gone over for her well. Because she wasn't somebody that I thought would be the standout that would be when she moved up, right? Okay, put it like this. When you look at the Riot Squad, and remember when Sarah Logan was left because she was pregnant and never returned after maternity leave, Ruby Riott and Liv Morgan were a tag team together. And then Ruby was released. But meanwhile, we all knew, and if you don't want to believe this, then you don't have to. But even I could have told you that Ruby Soho, or Ruby Riott, is, and even back then in NXT, was the star of the duo. Period. Ruby Riott or Ruby Soho had more charisma, thought he had a better work rate, and it was neglected by WWE this whole time. And then when she was let go, AEW took this talent in Ruby Soho, changed her back to her original name in the Indies, and she's back out there, and now she's going for the TBS title come Wednesday against Jade Cargill. And she's got a chance to win. So, I mean, I like what they're doing right now with her. And Liv Morgan was not going to be that. She's we always talk about the Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Yeah, Liv Morgan was a Jannetty. She is. And when you look at some of the other stars that are out there, when it comes to Street Profits, Montez Ford is the Shawn Michaels, and Angelo Dawkins is the Marty Jannetty. When Otis and Tucker were split and decided to go with Otis, yeah, because Otis was the Shawn Michaels, Tucker was the Marty Jannetty. Liv Morgan, I'm sure she would do well in other women's divisions, wherever. I don't think Liv Morgan would be much of a standout as a knockout. I don't know if she would be an Impact Wrestling knockout. Because to me, Liv Morgan, she's a what's the word? She's a mid-carder. And she can stay in mid-carder, and she's going to have to come to grips with the fact that maybe this is the level that she's meant to be at, and that the mid-card is going to where she's at. And then maybe there's just no other way up, not in this company anyway. And I don't see another company that would step her up a little bit higher than that. I don't know. It's nothing against her. It's nothing to like about her. Like, I'm sure a lot of fans like her because she's relatable. And she just, younger and just kind of relates to the fans. But in the eyes of what WWE needs, Liv Morgan's not the answer. She is not an answer in the mix, in the solution. And Big E is not either. Big E got a Kofi push. And this is one of the examples where, okay, for Big E, for as long as he had been in the company and for as long as he had been pushed up, yeah, this is the pinnacle of his career. He got to this level, and good on him. He did the best he could with a title run. It wasn't great, and I don't think the company did him completely wrong on how he was built, but Big E never advanced or never really felt like he took a step up after that. Because he probably thinks like the level he has right now. What do you do to kick that other notch once you become champion? And there are just only certain stars, superstars or wrestlers that can kick up to another notch once they get that belt. I really feel that. And that's not easy to do. Certain people really have that factor. Look, when Sammy Guevara lost the TNT title over to Cody Rhodes a couple weeks ago, about a week and a half ago. Yeah. And for Cody Rhodes to go and win it back, sure, people can feel a certain way, but I think Sammy Guevara, he's a young star as well, and I think he'll get back up to that level again. But the fact that they let him get up there is pretty cool and significant. But there are just certain stars, and I'm going to talk about on Wednesday, about those that when you have this generation of entitlement. Now, I don't want to talk about woke this and that here and there, but I think there is an entitlement phase in this generation of wrestlers now that have come on up, and the fans that root for them that, it's this person should get that participation trophy. It really is that. So it's one thing to earn your keep and earn your spot. Because look, the fact that you're in a company and you're making good money and you're being kept on as a regular time wrestler and you're on the road and you're working heavily, that's conventionally, that's what you are getting when you are working and you're earning your keep and you're getting rewarded as such. But when it's for the good of the storylines, when it's good for the company's bottom line to try to go ahead and build attractions in the company, some of the superstars they have will not be the headliners. Now, Liv Morgan fits a role in the company because when she comes out in the mid-card and she comes out there, it's a lot of fans that will fawn over her because they look her at as a role model, and she's out there and she's doing her thing. She's empowered, she's strong, and she's confident. And you could put her in other feuds all you want, but you have to be a certain level. You have to have a certain it factor to get up into that championship level. which we all know that this is what WWE is all built on. It's when you have a belt, that benchmark means something more. But when you have that belt, you have to be a certain level. Now, WWE might not even know what that is, but you have to be at that certain level. And that's what they were dealing with. And when you look at who won matches tonight, Usos, Drew McIntyre, RK Bro, Edge, Becky Lynch, Brock Lesnar. And there's only a handful of stars that were opponents tonight that really stand out and make that big a difference. But there's only so many they have left. You're going into WrestleMania season, and you're saying to yourself, okay, Usos, New Day, Drew McIntyre, RK Bro, Edge, The Miz, I'll put in that category, Becky Lynch, and Brock Lesnar, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Bobby Lashley. That's the nucleus of what you have on the main roster now that are really being presented important. Are the people that Vince, Bruce, John Laurinaitis, Kevin Dunn, whatever, the people responsible for the day-to-day television product. Those stars are what they care about. And then if you're going to include the other ones, you include Sasha Banks. If you can include some other women's stars, hopefully that will come back. You could say Asuka, Sasha Banks, Bayley. You could add Lacey Evans in that mix, I would think. If you're thinking about the men in the roster, well, there's not much more after that. When I think about it, I mean, without Roman Reigns on the show tonight, it takes a big hole out. But that's where they are right now. What has to be understood is that there's still more to be done to help build some of the stars they have. And maybe they'll catch on to something. Because really in WWE, it's all about there's something that will catch on with this fan base or with people on television, watching the product that will catch on. Something that will trend, something that will go viral. But what has anybody done that they're able to do within the confines and the constructs of WWE to get over something bigger? That's the question. Because regardless of what you think or not, WWE can also do things where they can offer gimmicks that could help based on something that might work that could help build a star. Sometimes they can do that, and sometimes they have done that. But right now, when you have certain stars that are on the main roster that don't fit the mold of what they're looking at going forward in the future, then you're looked at as, okay, we have to do something with you right now. We have no choice but to use you. And when they do, it's just something makeshift under this dead season. But hopefully something will come from your appearance in the Royal Rumble because you'll have a chance to be in that match. When you're looking at Liv Morgan, you're looking at, Doudrop or Bianca Belair, or, you're looking at a Damian Priest, or you're looking at, some of the other stars who look at Omos, and they're putting a little bit of spotlight on them like we talked about back at WrestleMania last year. Royal Rumble is going to give that spotlight. I don't know what you do before then. But, that's where they are. It sucks. But they are so light on their roster. And none of the talent they brought that they released, in their opinion, and maybe for the most part, I mean, you could make the dispute, well, you had all those NXT stars from the Undisputed Era, or some of the stars you brought on board, and then some others you're just not utilizing correctly that should be inserted into slots right now. But if they were, they would have been put there. Obviously, they feel like there's just certain people they have on their roster that didn't make for this pay-per-view, and they hold a purpose. But the purpose of being that headline, that main eventer, that will not only catch the interest of the fan base. The fan base is just part of the formula. It's not even the biggest part. Can he or she be marketed, advertised, promoted, used as a spokesperson? Will the stockholders curry favor? Will the broadcast partners curry favor? And when you look at who won tonight, I mean, you ask yourself, Brock Lesnar filling in the role in that WWE title match because they had to fill in that. They just wanted to put Brock Lesnar in. They had to put him on the show. Could not keep him out just because of the fact that Roman Reigns could not wrestle tonight. But now, yeah, you did put a real big wrinkle into what's going on going forward for WrestleMania season. Because now WrestleMania season comes in and Brock Lesnar has a belt and it's not the Universal title. What do you do with that Universal title now? Does Brock Lesnar still continue the storyline with Roman Reigns, which was, they were going to have their match. And Paul Heyman was supposed to be the catalyst for the match. But the fact that all we got was Roman Reigns firing Paul Heyman, and that's it. Which took away what the match was going to be about. I mean, you could just put Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns on the back burner, sure. Doesn't make a difference. But now you have to build a new opponent for Roman Reigns. And what they did tonight, after Brock Lesnar won, they definitely teased a lot of interaction between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, which I said for a long time, if we can have that match, which I already know Bobby Lashley, when he came back, specifically said he wanted to have that match because of the MMA background and the fact that they could tell a great story together based on their histories together. We can have Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, and that will be a legendary match at WrestleMania for one of those nights. So let's have that happen. And that's all I got to say about day one. Not much more after that. So far, it was a, C+ pay-per-view. When you don't have much more when it comes to building of the storylines, I still have to consider that a part. If I want to build on a curve, the fact that I know the TV product's going to be stale, then yeah, make it a B pay-per-view. Partly because Roman Reigns could not be on the show. And we didn't get that second world title match, which is unfortunate. But I hope that Roman Reigns gets better, and hopefully he doesn't have any symptoms at all due to this, and obviously with his immunocompromised position and his work with leukemia, hopefully that he is going to be okay. Hopefully we'll get an update on his condition on Monday night, tomorrow night as we record this. All right. So let's go and talk about a couple other stories that came about this weekend as we go ahead and talk about this. Let's talk about AEW and Big Swole. Now, I don't like talking about Palace Intrigue. I don't like talking about all this gossip stuff. But there's a few things I do want to make point of in that story. And before I get to that, I want to also make the point of a story that came across about how a number of Ring of Honor stars are now free agents. Now that whatever compete clause they might have had on their contracts are done. But yes, there's quite a few stars that are now free agents that could be signed right away by other companies because Ring of Honor's contract was at the end of the year. All those contracts are going to be null and void. They were going to be completed. So right now, Fightful Select confirmed the names so far that are officially free agents. Jonathan Gresham, who is still the reigning Ring of Honor World Champion. Silas Young, Mike Bennett, Josh Woods, Shane Taylor, Rhett Titus, the Beer City Bruiser, Brian Malonis, and Danhausen. So a lot of names right there to go after. So we're going to wait on that. Okay, Big Swole, who I think she had been around with AEW since pretty much the very early onset of the company as a full-time brand. And, she got certain matches and certain feuds that she had on the women's roster on the very early part. She was signed in 2019 after appearing in the Casino Battle Royal at All Out 2019 and would make regular appearances on AEW Dark. and she was sidelined in early 2021 when it revealed that she had been battling Crohn's disease. Now, she, and this is from Fightful.com, reporting on, they basically wrote about there was an interview that she had done on her call-in show on why she decided to mutually part ways with AEW. Now, she mutually parted ways in September. So now we are roughly 3 months later, and somebody decided to go ahead and talk about this. Now, one of the feuds that was significant for Big Swole was the Diamante feud, and she noted that Kenny Omega thanked her for what she did in the Diamante feud and how it made other women in the company more comfortable to pitch ideas. Now, she spoke about her final talk with Tony Khan before they decided to go ahead and mutually, amicably split on working together in the future, or working together now, but leaving an opening for the future. Quote, I explained to TK I didn't want to resign because my peace was being disrupted. If anybody knows me or myself, if anything is disrupting your peace, it's time to let it go. It might be scared, it might be hard, but it's time to let it go. When Kenny said that, it was a circle coming to an end because Kenny and I would bump heads sometimes throughout my time in AEW. To end it on that note felt good. It felt wonderful to end it in a place where we didn't see eye to eye, but we were there. And when she left the company, she said, quote, my heart just stopped being in it. I felt like there were a lot of things. I told my exit interview, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. She says here that, okay, there are more people coming in, but you don't have enough product for all these people. Now you have all these people sitting around having 2 or 3 minute matches on Dark doesn't keep me happy. Shoveling more money doesn't keep a person happy. We've seen time and time again, especially in a place when there's not enough space, there's no writers in a sense, not everyone is comfortable writing their own things, closed mouths don't get fed. That's exactly what this environment is. If you are shy and you don't know how to write or are not creative, it's not going to work unless they want to work it for you. That's one of their biggest issues. So with that said that is the way it should be. I mean, there has to be some enthusiasm, some charisma. You just can't be a mold of clay, especially with that company, when they don't want to be the WWE model where you have a boatload of writers to try to come up with something with you that might not be representative or might be unique or sincere to your character or to who you are as a person or something you might be comfortable with, right? Next, she says it was a lack of structure and a lack of diversity. This is the part that everybody really got caught up on. Quote, I do not beat around the bush when it comes to diversity and my people. Okay. There is no representation truly, and when there is, it does not come across the black community as genuine at all. I don't know why everybody is so afraid to accept it or say it, but it's not a good look. What happens is you have this wonderful company that treats people like family, but there's nobody that looks like me that is represented at the top and in the room with them. Well, who's Brandy Rhodes? I don't know. Just a thought. And, you know, that you need to have, I mean, if you're looking for a company that's supposed to be, I mean, really what she's saying is, well, I'm going to ask the question. Are you asking for a company to be an all-black community-based wrestling company, or that you absolutely have to have people in power in the company have to be black? Now, I've said this to other, interviews on my other stations when I've done, on Cannabis Radio. We talk about diversity, equity, inclusion all the time on the program because we feel like, all these companies feel like that they are destined. They feel like they need to be accountable and responsible to the community to make sure they have a like-minded representation of the people out there. Okay. So the idea is that if you want people to be in the fight with you, in positions of power, okay, this is the mindset where she's saying, okay, she would like to see people in positions of power. But somebody's got to be able to be in that spot to earn that position of power. And if they're not the ones, then that's upon you to become that position of power and to work your way up. And in this company, okay, they didn't feel like there was anybody out there. But the question is for Big Swole, what company has the kind of representation that has positions of power held by a majority or just a good complement of black people, people of the black community? I mean, we know there's enough entrepreneurs out there that could run their own companies, but it's just not, that kind of business wouldn't work. You know, it's kind of a tribal thought. It's like the idea of, well, let's just have an all Jewish company, or let's just have an all Hispanic federation. I mean, if you're looking at the sports that are in other countries, you know, we see the representation of certain wrestling companies and where wrestling is represented best in other countries, in Japan, in Mexico. But it's not like we're seeing it in Africa, right? We obviously see there's a lot of influence when it comes to the Muslim countries like Dubai or Saudi Arabia, or in Europe, obviously, with England. But really, or Canada. But is anybody doing that right now? I mean, which company is diverse, inclusive, and equitable? Name me a company that does that. This is a new company. You create and foster that environment. So you have people within that create that. By the way, Mark Henry's part of that group. Okay? It's a matter of bringing in people that will come in. If there are people that are qualified, that can do the work, that could come into the space and help foster, help build up a company, and they just happen to be somebody of your people that you feel comfortable working with, and knowing that you feel like you're in the right environment with other people that came up from your background in the same way that you did and can understand your plight or understand your background or the reason for your how you were raised. Okay. But what company does that? I mean, that's the question. Maybe wrestling isn't a place where they're going to have that kind of going on. I don't know. So what she's asking for is, it's a pipe dream for the most part. I'm not here to go ahead and judge if it's right or wrong. It's just not realistic. Unless you are able to go ahead and find people that are coming into the company to help work with you like that. Okay. She also explained how her daughter helped her recognize even more and more there was a lack of representation in AEW. Quote, I knew something was up when my daughter, who loves watching wrestling, said she would watch AEW all the time and seldomly watch WWE. She's not a big fan unless Dad, Cedric Alexander, was on TV. She says, Mommy, there's nobody that looks like me on AEW. There's nobody that looks like Daddy. Then she started watching because she saw Bianca Belair and Big E. She saw herself represented. It's 2021. Why are people saying it'll take 3 years for AEW to have a black champ? This is a scripted sport. It shouldn't take that long if you've been watching WWE for 50 years and you don't know what not to do. Okay, the other question is, how many stars have you had in any company that could have been built to be world champion? And by the way, WWE's had world champions that have been black. I mean, WWE during Black History Month, they're not afraid to go ahead and talk about the fact that some of the stars that came in to the business, black wrestlers that did very well. Big Cat Ernie Ladd, Junkyard Dog. You look at Ron Simmons, first ever black NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Why don't we include Bobby? Where's Bobby Lashley in the conversation? Why don't we talk about him, huh? Why don't we talk about MVP? And where's the talk about New Day? We're just talking about Sasha Banks. I'm just saying, we're not about Naomi. Are we going to include her? Are we going to include Street Profits? Right? And when I think about AEW, do I have to go through this right here and discuss Sonny Kiss, Captain Sean Dean, Powerhouse Hobbs, Lee Moriarty? I mean, really, there needs to be black representation at decision-making levels and in championship levels? Is that what we're saying right now? Is that the point of contention that Big Swole has? Is that it? I'm not questioning if it's right or wrong. Listen to me. Am I saying it's right or wrong? Am I saying anything about what she's saying is wrong? I'm saying it's not realistic. Because, I'm just going to say it like this, okay? If we're going to go that route, right? Then we have to think about, well, why shouldn't Asian Americans, or, this is in Japan, why should we have more Japanese or Chinese stars? They're making their way also in positions of power. And, the idea is, for Hispanics, Latinos like myself, or Japan, they have companies predominantly Hispanic or Japanese or what have you. So, if I want to have representation, when it comes to wrestling, Puerto Rico, we've got the Caribbean Wrestling Federation in Puerto Rico. We got CMLL and AAA in Mexico. You want to talk about New Japan? You got Pro Wrestling Noah. You got All Japan, New Japan. What is it about that? There has to be this thing where, this is where the thought process, and I'm just going to say it like this, where if Hispanics or Asians or Jewish people or Muslims, they have their own way of getting themselves rounded together to have their communities represented properly in decisions of power and to be at top levels in the entertainment field of a sports entertainment company or a pro wrestling company like an AEW. That's based on the pro wrestling business of those that are in the business working their way up to positions of power. So is there some kind of oppression that, that Big Swole feels like there is? Is that the question? Is there an oppression here? Is there a privilege here that's being put on? Now, she talks about that. She says she's exhausted when it comes to the pandering of diversity and how it feels like, quote, use this person for a little. They've done what you need. Now what's next? Quote, I believe the company's making bigger strides than before, but a couple of things need to be fixed. You have to be able to call people out because not everything is perfect. I hope they listen to this with an open heart and just say, she's just not saying this because of X, Y, and Z. I genuinely want them to succeed. I love this art form. I love wrestling. I want it to succeed. And I want the people in it to succeed if they're genuine people. With promises you made to be diverse, I want to see that. Not just with black people. All right. Let's see what else she says. I would love to see a little Latino or Hispanic or more Asians. I feel like Asians and Indians do not get the love. Hold on. Are we talking about Native Americans? Or are we talking about Indians from the Indian subcontinent? And by the way, just because there's not any Indian, representation in AEW does not mean there is not. All right. I would like to go and make mention of Rinka King. I actually thought about that the other day. And the fact that it wasn't that long ago. And by the way, we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Rinka King. That's how long the show's been around. Rinka King. Excuse me. Rinka King. Actually, 10 years ago, it was a thing. And there are a number of stars that are still around as a result. Okay, when you look at Mahabali Shira, Rohit Raju, the Bollywood boys, as that whole part of like certain wrestlers coming in from India. Look at today right now with Veer and Shanky and Jinder Mahal. All right, World Wrestling Entertainment, they do try to do the worldwide thing, that whole makeup representation. I think with AEW, I don't know. Maybe there just hasn't been anybody that was worthwhile to bring on board. They just don't. It's such a big gap, she says. I hate the fact that I turn on the TV, the same stuff over and over again. Okay, you got to open. You work with Cedric Alexander. Or you're married to him. Right? Right. It's Alexander is her husband. Okay. I mean, this guy also knows about, the fact that, are you watching New Japan or CMLL or AAA? I mean, if you've been around long enough, did you happen to catch Ring of King? I did. I love that show. It was great. I might even have to go back and look at it again if I can go find it. But with her, that's how she felt. Okay. There's no bad blood between TK and I. I just don't like my peace being disrupted. Didn't like certain things, and other things I will take to my grave. The diversity, that's what matters. Now, what really caused this a big mess? Everybody got caught up with Tony Khan and the fact that he took to Twitter about this, and he says, quote, "The top AEW executives are brown. Me and Mega, Jade, Bowens, Caster, Dante, Nyla, Isaiah, and Mark Quinn all won on TV this month. The TBS title of the tournament has been very diverse. I let Swole's contract expire as I felt her wrestling wasn't good enough." Yeah. Tony Khan, he didn't need to go ahead and get into this and feel offended by it. I think this is where Tony Khan felt triggered. He was upset, and he probably felt a little bit of betrayal by the fact that any of this comment was going on, which was actually probably behind closed doors when the exit of Big Swole happened back in September. And some stars have already responded as well about what they should do. And so we got a few people that were actually on both different sides when it comes to the black representation at AEW. Leah Rush simply said apologize. Captain Sean Dean, who's an AEW wrestler and extras coordinator, mentioned that his official title behind the scenes, a black male in the office, giving as many opportunities to minority talents as I can every single week. On the community team, raising awareness for inner city kids any chance I get. The things we are expecting can and will happen, trust the process. Right? Then you have a live events and touring director, Raphael Morphy, Hispanic, defending the company. Powerhouse Hobbs also gave, a positive response to this when it comes to his experience in the company, saying, "Now TK has put me in spots at the right time that meant something. Punk, Christian Cage, Brian Cage, Hangman, especially running in and saving Mox, and the company has been there since the passing of my mother. Cody and QT played a tremendous part in getting me signed. Lastly, if you have an issue with someone, pick up the phone." Yeah. So the thing is, Tony Khan, he can probably feel a certain kind of way that he feels like he's done a lot for the wrestlers that have been out there. And so for one wrestler to show a little bit of disgruntlement, because sure, there might have been an amicable change, but why should it matter? She's not with the company right now. And for the fact that Tony Khan is concerned about other people playing down the company and creating this a problem within the locker room, he didn't need to respond in public, more or less. Maybe they could have had a statement out there to be said, but really it didn't really need a statement. What could have been done was, if you want to hear, okay, there have been some comments in the public about, our direction when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and they just, say as all Elite Wrestling, we are making a lot of steps, and, we're doing what we can in terms of representation, in terms of opportunities, things like that, yada, yada. He could have done that, but he didn't. And the way he presented out there in a tweet wasn't the best way to approach. And that's where somebody could have taken a step back on him and say, "Hey, Tony, before you tweeted that out, let's talk for a second." I mean, that might have just been something he did on his own, and he felt compelled to do it. There might have been a step in the wrong direction. He didn't need to put that tweet out. I mean, this is where Powerhouse Hobbs said it, right? And this goes on both sides. where Tony Khan could have easily gone ahead and talked to Big Swole about it or something. I don't know. Just something could have been done to quell that down if there was a big deal. So that happened. Anyway, this is where I just feel like, I've been reading a lot about the idea of where there's this whole thought process. Well, there obviously there's such a thing as privilege and opposition. But then all the different ways that people like to portray that dynamic right there, it's mind-boggling. And to see it being done in wrestling, where we got two adults here that could have handled this much better, but airing the dirty laundry out there like it wasn't a good look. And for Big Swole, if that's the kind of comments you're going to make, look, no one's judging you for the fact that you could say what you want to say. But if you're looking to go and do any more work out on the road, I don't know if that looks well on you. Same way with Jordan Miles, also being very critical when he left WWE, right? Or ACH. Same thing happened with him, too. And, it's just like any other job. If you're going to ruffle feathers, you're going to be looked at as disruptive. And that doesn't help aid your cause at all, because nobody's going to respond to hostility or any kind of commentary that isn't productive. And I'm not saying what she has said wasn't productive. It's that, okay, you explained it to Tony Khan when you left. You had an exit interview with him. But yet, that wasn't enough. You feel like you need to go public with more about this and air a little bit of air grievance on her. Was it necessary? Is that going to help your cause? I mean, are you just playing for points out there to get the fan base out there for wrestling fans that might be a little more sympathetic or responsive to your play, or might relate to what you're saying? Are you trying to get them on your side? Are those people going to help fundraise for you if there's something where you feel like you want to get yourself back on the, back in wrestling somewhere in some company? Are they going to be there to get you into said company? If there was something that you needed some kind of help from them, are they going to be there for you? They might be there vocally, but no more than that. Both sides should have been much more cautious or conscientious of what they were doing before they get on social media or getting into a podcast in front of a microphone. Just saying. I don't know. It's just stupid to me, but why not bring it up on the show? Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. That's it for the day one post show. Thanks for listening in. We'll come back this Wednesday going into Thursday, and we might go in a little bit of this. Not so much this part, but the entitlement of wrestlers out there. That might be a good subject to talk about when we're coming into now the new year and where things are right now when it comes to the wrestling fans and who they want to see pushed and where WWE is obviously not going that direction. Anyway, come back later this week for another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at wrestlingisreal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.